Good afternoon, and welcome to True Crime Mysteries. If you are new to the channel, hello and welcome, and if you are returning, welcome back. If you could give this video a like and comment with your thoughts, that would be much appreciated as it helps the channel grow. And if you are not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and click that red button because I make more content like this, and hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post. Today, we are discussing 3 more recently solved, decades-old cold cases. But first, I would like to thank the sponsor of this video, BetterHelp. Let's get into it. The Durham Family. It was February 3rd, 1972, in Boone, North Carolina, when a snowstorm was blowing into town. 51-year-old Bryce Durham attended a Rotary meeting, and barely anyone had shown up. The weather was starting to get worse as he went to pick up his wife, Virginia, at the Buick car dealership they owned. Their 18-year-old son, Bobby, also joined them at the dealership to get a ride home. Bryce opted to leave their car at the dealership and instead decided to borrow a vehicle that was better suited for the snow so they could get home safely. Later that evening, their oldest child, Ginny Hall, who lived with her husband about 4 miles away, was watching the Winter Olympics with her husband, Troy, when they received a strange call. It had been Troy who answered, and he wasn't able to discern what the caller was saying, but he told Ginny it sounded like her mother. They tried to call back, but the line was busy. They became increasingly concerned and eventually decided to drive over to their house and check on them. They went out and tried to start their car, but it wouldn't start. They knocked on the door of their neighbor, who was a retired private detective who offered to drive them. Ginny stayed in the car, while Troy and the neighbor went into the house. Immediately, they knew something wasn't right. The house had been ransacked. Troy saw that the telephone had been ripped from the wall, and the TV was still on in the living room. They also heard the sound of running water coming from the bathroom, but other than that, the house was silent. The bodies of Bryce, Virginia, and Bobby were discovered in the bathroom. Troy ran to a neighbor's house, where he called the police, and an investigation began immediately. The call from the Durham's house had come in around 10:30 p.m., with Ginny and Troy arriving about 15 minutes later. Officers arrived shortly after. The vehicle that Bryce had borrowed was missing from the driveway. Neighbors reported seeing the vehicle leaving the Durham house around 10:30. The vehicle was recovered several hours later, abandoned with the doors closed, engine running, and the wipers still going. The vehicle also contained stolen items from the house, indicating to officers that robbery hadn't been the primary motive in the attack. No one could understand why the family had been targeted. They had moved to Boone 18 months prior from a neighboring county, and they opened up their dealership. Everyone who knew them described them as quiet, keeping to themselves, but hardworking. No one knew of anything that could explain why they had been murdered. An autopsy was done, and it was determined that Bryce and Bobby had been drowned, and Virginia had been strangled. Nothing of value was taken from the home. Cash and jewelry had been left behind. Detectives had 4 suspects in mind and interrogated them several times, but there was no evidence tying them to the crimes, and they had to be released. Without further evidence, the case went cold for 50 years. Then, in 2019, a tip was called into the Watauga County Sheriff's Office. A man named Shane Burt believed he had information that his father had been involved in the Durham case. His father, Billy Sunday Burt, who was already incarcerated in Georgia, had told him that he had been involved in a family murder in North Carolina, and also revealed a snowstorm had almost caused them to be caught. His father had passed in 2017, and he wanted to pass on the information in case it would help the case. Burt also implicated a man named Billy Wayne Davis as having been involved, so police looked him up and discovered he was also incarcerated in Georgia. They discovered Bert and Davis had been involved in a Georgia mob. Davis confirmed that, along with Bert, Bobby Jean Gaddis and Charles David Reed had also been involved. Davis, now 81 and the only survivor, said that he had only acted as the getaway driver and that the others had murdered the family. Davis said that they had murdered them because there had been a hit out on Bryce and they were just fulfilling the contract, but he said he didn't know why a hit had been placed or why Bryce had been wanted by a local mafia. "We are confident that we now know who committed these crimes," Sheriff Hageman said in the statement. "This is a much-needed turning point for the Durham case." Though they don't believe they will ever know who hired the men to kill the Durhams, they are confident they know who did it and have closed the case after 5 decades. Now, I would like to take a minute to talk about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? This last year has been a roller coaster in so many ways, and it is totally normal to work on those emotional twists and turns. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in as little as 48 hours. It is super easy. You take the quick questionnaire and get matched to one of BetterHelp's network of over 20,000 therapists. It is available to clients worldwide, and they do their best to match you with someone as locally as possible. You can also log into your account anytime and message your therapist. In addition to messaging, you can schedule weekly video sessions or phone sessions, so you don't have to sit in a waiting room or commute to an appointment. BetterHelp is committed to helping you find the perfect someone you are comfortable with, and it is free and easy to change therapists if necessary. BetterHelp is more affordable than traditional in-office therapy, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. BetterHelp is not a crisis line. It isn't self-help. It is a way to get professional therapy done securely online. Check out my link, betterhelp.com/TCM, and use my code TCM to get 10% off your first month and get started today. That is betterhelp.com/TCM to get 10% off. Join over 2 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of experienced professionals. Thank you again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Nacole Smith. It was on June 5th, 1995 in Atlanta, Georgia, when 14-year-old Nacole Smith was walking to school with her little sister. Early in on the walk, Nacole realized she forgot something she needed for class and turned around and headed back towards her house. To save a little time, Nacole cut through a small wooded area that she normally didn't walk through alone. It was in this shortcut that a man confronted her, brutally assaulted her, and shot her twice in the face. Nacole's body was found later that day, and a massive investigation followed to find the man who killed her. A DNA profile was established in 1995, but detectives were never able to find the person it belonged to. Detectives collected over 50 blood samples from suspects and compared them to the DNA of the killer, but none were a match. Without further evidence, the case went cold. In 2002, the case was reopened and worked on for 2 years, but again, no new leads were found. In 2004, their killer had attacked another young teenager, 9 years after Nacole's murder. The victim was 13, and this victim survived the attack and had been able to work with a sketch artist to generate the first composite image of their suspect. Hundreds of persons of interest were interviewed. The case was even aired on national television, being featured on America's Most Wanted. But again, without any new leads, the case went cold. With the increase in genetic genealogy being used to solve cold cases, Atlanta detectives thought this case had a good chance at being solved. They sent out samples in 2021, and just before Christmas, they were notified that they had a match. The man they had been looking for 26 years was 49-year-old Kelvin Arnold. Arnold had never been a suspect in either investigation and was not known to the victims, nor did he have a criminal history. They were disappointed to discover that Arnold would never be able to be arrested, as he had died in August of 2021 of liver and kidney failure.
I never imagined this person to be deceased. So many unanswered questions that I had for him that I could never ask or get answers. But I would never say it was closure for me, because I'll live with this pain for the rest of my life.
Officials are looking to see if there are any more victims connected to Arnold, but said in a statement that the state of Georgia has a significant backlog of untested sexual assault kits, and it may take time.
I am the Deputy District Attorney for the Colden Capital Case Unit for the District Attorney's Office, headed by District Attorney Fonnie Willis. And beside me is Chief Senior Assistant District Attorney Juliana Peterson, who heads our Saki unit. I have prosecuted cases for nearly 20 years now, and under DA Willis's administration, I have been placed at the head of our Colden Capital Case Unit. And the number of years that I have been serving as a prosecutor, serving the citizens of the state of Georgia, is emblematic of the type of experience and the type of prosecutor DA Willis has sought to place in the position such as this. Since I have started in this role as head of the Colden Capital Case Unit, I have worked with Detective DeMeester, tirelessly watched as he has relentlessly pursued leads in this case. I'm happy that we're here today, that we have been able to gain some degree of closure for the family. But I can also say that this is the kind of case that underscores the need for the type of leadership and the type of collaboration that we have and that we see between the Fulton County District Attorney's Office and the Atlanta Police Department and the other agencies within Fulton County. And this case is emblematic of how we will work going forward and how we will continue to work. I'm happy and I'm proud to stand before you with these amazing people behind me who have actually made this come to fruition. I'm going to let Ms. Peterson have a few words because there is still more to be done.
Good morning, everyone. My title is Deputy District Attorney over the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative Unit, and our role and our mission is specifically to handle the backlog of sexual assault kits that have never been tested. Our initial work has been completed with the backlog that was found at Grady Hospital that left us with approximately 169 DNA results from those sexual assault kits that our office has then gone on to investigate and hopefully prosecute, many of those being serial offenders. However, the work is not over, and cases like this show exactly why it is so incredibly important that we continue this work. The incredible work of the Atlanta Police Department in following the science and making sure the DNA was tested is a huge part of why exactly we're here today. And that goes on to show why it's so important that under the leadership of Fonnie Willis and partnering with incredible agencies like the Atlanta Police Department, we have to keep doing the work. We have more sexual assault kits that have to be tested. At the GBI alone, there are over 2,400 sexual assault kits for Fulton County alone from the 1980s and 1990s that must be tested. There are more Nacole Smiths, there are more Betty Browns out there, and it's absolutely imperative that the state government recognize that and go forward and test these kits.
Toynia Aughtman. This is kind of an odd cold case, and I'm not even sure if it was a cold case or more of a forgotten case. It was the early morning hours of July 17th, 2007, in Thonotosassa, Florida, when a 911 call came in. The caller was identified as Jonathan Burns, and he claimed that he had been attacked by one of his tenants. He said that he was suffering multiple stab wounds and that his tenant, Toynia Aughtman, had been killed in self-defense. The detectives arrived on the scene and found the 41-year-old victim located outside her home. She was deceased and had a large laceration on her neck, as well as several wounds on her chest. Burns, who was 43 at the time, also had 2 wounds to the abdomen. Burns was taken to the hospital to have his wounds treated, and it was also noted that he had several scratch marks on his hands and had several small cuts on his fingers. During the investigation, officers had discovered a trail of blood that led to the area behind Burns' home. There, they also found a bloody knife in a garbage bin and later determined it had been Burns' DNA. They also discovered that Burns' blood was not found anywhere near Toynia's body, nor was her DNA found on the knife. They also discovered that Toynia was disabled and used a walker and wheelchair to get around. Though she could stand, she would have had great difficulty attacking someone without her mobility aids, and someone able-bodied could easily have gotten away from her. This is where it kind of gets strange. The evidence was shown to the state attorney, who concluded there wasn't enough evidence to charge Burns with murder, and the investigation just stopped. Burns wasn't interrogated, or even challenged on his series of events. Neighbors weren't interviewed, it just stopped, and officers were directed elsewhere. Fast forward to 15 years later, when the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit decided to reopen this case. On January 14th, they went back to Jonathan Burns and interviewed him about the events that had occurred when Toynia had been stabbed to death. Burns told detectives that he had been drinking heavily that night, and Toynia had started yelling at him while he was doing his closing procedure for the common areas of the mobile home park they lived on. Toynia had been a tenant for a long time, and he claimed he walked over to talk to her, and she just stabbed him. When other tenants of the park learned that detectives had come by to interview Burns, they started calling into the sheriff's office to share information. Several witnesses claimed that in the days following Toynia's death, Burns was drunk and had admitted to doing something wrong and needing to face it. Another person stated that Burns had told them that Toynia had gotten what she deserved, and that he would do it again if given the chance. A third person said that when they asked Burns how he had been stabbed, he told them that he had stabbed himself in the abdomen so that the self-defense would look legitimate. Burns had written a letter detailing what had actually happened that night. He said that he saw Toynia outside of her home while he was closing up the park for the night. He stated that they got into an argument, and then he went home, grabbed a knife from his kitchen, and went back to her home. He said that she had tried to go inside, but he stabbed her several times and cut her throat. He then went back home and stabbed himself, and tried to hide the knife before calling 911. The letter was turned over to law enforcement, who were able to validate it with the evidence from the crime scene. When asked why he did it, he just said that he didn't like her. He wanted to hurt her. He said in a statement, "Unfortunately, I killed her. This was a terrible tragedy that I am responsible for. I wish I could change it." Jonathan Burns has not yet been arrested and charged with the murder of Toynia Aughtman. He will have his first court appearance later this month. Well, that is it for this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this content and what I do over here, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. And if you could give a like if you enjoy the content, that would be much appreciated. We also have a channel membership or Patreon if you want to get more behind-the-scenes content, as well as exclusive content, or just to support the channel. In the description box of this video, you will also find all of my socials linked to connect with me, as well as other goodies. But that is it for me. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.